The Depth to Delve Deep by Rote Writer. Chapter 49 Newgrange. When the bus passes the border into Cavan County, or as the Irish say, County Cavan, Ireland, and County Fermanagh, Northern Ireland, he is surprised to see no customs or check stops, nothing, just a highway, unhindered as the bus just keeps going on. This leaves a vacant stamp in his passport. He thinks by entering into another country his passport book will be stamped. So when his stay reaches 6 months, he'll be eligible to stay another 6, all due to the duration of his country's visa limit, verified with a passport stamp upon arrival in the UK. In lieu of all these new circumstances, he begins saving bus fare receipts, bank statements, tickets from tourist trappings, and the like, to, if need be, prove he stepped out of the UK before the initial 6 months will more than likely expire. Rote passes through County Fermanagh towards the border into another county and country. He keeps his eyes peeled for a large stone shaped like seat that's an actual stone throne, a seat of the Maguires. It might be found along the side of the highway, as pictured in one of his pertinent photos. No luck. Wait, what was that? As the bus barrels too fast by what seems to be, and thus, as he thinks by then, he's passed through most of the Maguire chiefdom of old and is grateful for seeing the seats seen. Along the way into Ireland, it seems all that changes are the street signs, now all in Irish Gaelic with English subtitles. In Northern Ireland, signs are all in English with no subtitles. Even Scotland doesn't proudly promote her original language like the Irish, though nor does Northern Ireland, all belonging to Great Britain, as it were. He learns later Wales not only waxes her Welsh ways, but also wanes her part of Great Britain away, with her television stations and newscasts in Welsh. Britain is kept at bay. Meanwhile, down through central Ireland proper and on into Dublin, Ireland's capital city, Rote rides on. He learns it's initially a Viking investiture. Now in Dublin, daunted by the struggle and strife of life that leaves a lot shot and caught between the bullets and bullying. Since the 12th century, Ireland, and some centuries before, has tried to tell the foreign forces in so many ways, fuck off. Rote knows by note the songs like the Cranberries' Zombie and U2's Sunday Bloody Sunday that stir the Irish soul, songs sung for far too long. Rote remembers, like in the movie Michael Collins, where leading man Liam Neeson portrays the Irish insurgent. The Irish are always portrayed with a life of strife, fighting for freedom. Rote learns the Gaelic word for freedom is Saoirse. He knows what it means to struggle. He knows the literal translation of Sinn Féin, ourselves alone. He knows the Gaelic translation for Ireland forever is So, not wanting to stay in Dublin, he thinks ahead, just like he doesn't want to stay in Belfast until all sights are seen. He boards another bus, though not before withdrawing euros for the first time from a bank machine just outside of Dublin's bus depot. He learns that up to and until a few months before his arrival, the Irish Republic currency is found to be like the British pound. Now a part of the European community, much to the chagrin of the British, their currency concurs with the euro. So with that, he doubles back from Dublin to Drogheda, situated on the Boyne River by the sea. It's a historically tragic township found north of Ireland's capital city. He learns in the middle of the 16th century, Oliver Cromwell and his cronies, Puritan parliamentarians, totally trampled the townspeople of Drogheda in an all-out death blow, massacring en masse the entire town, leaving only St. Lawrence Gate. A great hate prompted by a papacy pounding mounted in the middle of the last millennium, all honed in by Henry VIII, captained by Cromwell, and finalized by William of Orange. Alas, this is to be an Irish incursion into Rote's adventure, not an English excursion. Unfortunately, wherever he goes in Ireland, it's marred and scarred by the English. Rote learns, like Scotland, Ireland is one more land to have suffered under the hand of every English monarch and parliament. It starts long before though, when the Dane, Thane, and Norman came. Sometimes Rote is absorbed absolutely when in the midst of historical haunts. He has to move on, and he does by backtracking by the bus the way he comes, though by a different coach towards Drogheda. He's delving even deeper into the past, for near is Newgrange, a prehistoric place. It's a megalithic monument likened to Stonehenge, or the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt, only older, as the name Newgrange, Rote learns, is a bit deceiving, a misnomer if ever one. Now at the Drogheda bus depot, Rote sits on his two blue bags of rags, while waiting for the connecting bus to barrel him to the ancient barrow. He watches all. Near to 4 in the afternoon, he ponders and wonders if there'll be a bus. When a slew of school buses pull up, he realizes this coach stands is also a school bus station. Rote walks to one of the buses filled with the cheerful Irish school children and asks the bus driver if he knows when, where, and if there's a connecting bus to Newgrange. The bus driver, realizing Rote's a foreigner, says, "Why not hop on the school bus? It passes by Newgrange, and as far as I know, no other buses do." Immediately taken by the Irish hospital manner, he wards, taking a free, albeit noisy, ride to the tumulus with a bunch of rambunctious Irish rovers. These Irish rascals would have enjoyed a fist fight with him if he were so inclined. The fiends are fiery as all hell, the little hooligans. Thankfully, though, they seem more interested in his accent and where he's from and going. Rote always noticed his temperament growing up, and he noticed his childhood friends who were all on part Irish descent. But now in Ireland, Rote really can see the true nature of the Irish rising from these children. For the fighting Irish is old cliche. With goodbyes and good luck in an Irish accented youthful way, he gets off the bus thanking his lucky charms for suffering no harms from the halfling hooligans. He heads to the main entrance of the prehistoric shrine. He senses it's more than likely already closed for the night to tourists and the like. Well, that's never stopped Rote before, already planning to camp out somewhere nearby. Inside the Newgrange empty parking lot, save for one vehicle, Rote goes in the opposite direction of the presumed path leading to the entrance. He finds a tiny man-made circle of stones spiraling in circumference at the far end of the parking lot. He figures he can set up his sleeping bag somewhere nearby, ready with his large plastic bag to slip into if it should rain. With the sleeping spot determined for the night and his two blue beasts of burdens bogged down in the bushes by the Boyne, he surveys his surroundings. He imagines himself as one of Finn McCool's Fame, famous for fighting but also foregoing all possessions, living off the land. Surely Finn found sleep by the Boyne. Rote spends some time living like this in his own land and now in Ireland. Ah, to be right beside the historically famous River Boyne amidst it all, knowing full well the myths and legends learned and depend upon who serves them up. And Rote's learned a few stemming from the Battle of the Boyne in 1690, between the forces loyal to Protestant William of Orange, marries Mary, very daughter of Catholic King he ousts, James II. The Orangemen celebrate the battle on the 12th of July, a sore spot still separating the Catholics and Protestants in Ulster. Lore and legend lends to those who tend to history's lessons a bit too much, thinks Rote, as he bothers himself with the thought if he should get cold come nightfall, fast approaching, he may want to gather some dry wood by the bank of the Boyne while it's still light. So he does, piling a bundle waist high in the center of the spiraling stone circle set up, supposedly set by the groundskeeper or landscapers in the site's infancy. It harbors a small picnic area and now him. He stares at the stack of sticks. He looks around and thinks maybe lighting a fire won't be such a good idea, seeing as there's barely any tree coverage. He might attract unwanted visitors. Now nearing the hour of 8, with the sun soon to be setting, the Irish rover makes his way over to the front gate to see if he can find a way to the sacred site undetected. Just as he's walking along the path to the presumed front gate, he notices a man with the gait of the groundskeeper. As he comes around the bend, the rascal hides in the bushes, waiting for the worker to walk on by. Rote then proceeds to evasively follow him, making sure he gets into his car and drives away. He meets the man earlier upon his arrival, shortly after Newgrange closes for the day. Then he asks the fellow what time the traction will be open in the morning. 9 a.m. Rote knows if he sees him sometime later that evening, he'll be immediately suspected of some kind of skullduggery, being still around after the first encounter. Approach averted, the ditch-dodging, bog-bound boy goes to the front gate. It's a suspension bridge, bridging the width of the Boyne River. From where he stands, it's hard to tell how far up the valley of farmland the searched for site is. After looking at a posted sign, he sees many a marrow barrow earthen entity moored like moguls on the pasture scene. The most famous and frequented is Newgrange, with Noth and Douth, a close second and third, all under the banner of Prune Boyne, the dwelling of place of the Boyne. Rote stands there and realizes there's no way he will be able to hop the sky-high fence separating the gate from the path along the suspension bridge. A bit bemused by it, he feels whoever wrecks the suspension bridge foresaw the fool's folly and made sure the gate is part ways down so it can't be hopped. Ah, but Rote thinks from the river level he will be able to shimmy up and over onto the bridge. With plan in mind, he walks away, noticing how curious it is that one side of the suspension bridge by the Boyne stand two supernatural sentries, Hugin and Munin, mind and memory. The Norse god Odin's shouldered sentinels, though instead of two ravens nestled as crests abreast the Boyne, a murder of crows. Rote sees, rising from the shore, two dead trees with several crows' nests in each. There, screaming and teeming, perhaps even scheming. It seems to be a sentinel sign post mortem for a misplaced Nick, soon to be stuck in muck. He'll backtrack to his campsite and wait the twilight of the night to dare his daring do. Meanwhile, he walks down to the path by the Boyne in the opposite direction of his determined adventure, just to get a feel of the area and its historical features. He meets an older fellow along the winded way, sharing just a smile, though Rote senses something behind the pale gale glint seen in the green of his eyes. He continues on and sees stone tunnels, some in a state of ruin along the path. They enhance the whole experience. He senses the shade, smallness, like leprechauns. He also gets a hint and tint of the children of the light. Now drawn by the dawning dusk, the devilish one makes his way back, determined to make it to one of the barrow burial mounds that night. After backtracking a few kilometers, he finds himself standing underneath the bridge. He knows there's no way he's going to be able to shimmy up it. He thinks maybe there can be another way across the river, down a bit further along the path. Along the path, maybe a few hundred yards past the bridge, the snoop sees through the twilight twinkles, an opening through the trees. He sees something sparkling, shining through the black earth beyond. Lured like a fish, the fool takes one step only to lose all footing fast. He finds himself sinking into a bog with no chance of battle. He's bogged down, still sinking in it, like being stuck in quicksand, and with no sense of any bottom about to be reached or found. Rote reaches to the sure ground he's just stepped from and stops his form from sinking further. He pulls himself out of a bog that only a few minutes before appears like blackened earth. Ah, the lure of shiny objects gets the fish every time. No wonder that fellow he meets earlier has a glint in his eye. Aye, fool! He imagines the bog to be bottomless and thinks there might be hundreds, if not thousands, of people through the aeons just like him, being bogged down. Though unlike him, they all don't make it back up out of the bog, sinking to unknown depths, still there, suspended in a primordial, bottomless pit of black. Away from the bog, he thinks, that puts a damper on my plans for the night. He sloshes back to his campsite, swathed in the bog's primordial blackness. He gets out of his garments covered in gunk back at his bivouac. He rolls them up as they are and puts them in a plastic bag, forever making sure the bog's content leaves a stain on his pants. In hindsight, he thinks it wouldn't have taken much effort to hike down to the point and rinse out my clothes, but by that time he's too tired. Ah, and hell, everything is clear in hindsight. After the initial shock and surprise wears off, he just wants to put on dry things and crawl into his sleeping bag. He's hoping not to have to crawl into his big orange garbage bag, but because the skies are overcast, he has to do just that. The following morning, after making sure his bags are packed and hidden in the bushes, he heads straight to the main entrance to enter and pay as any tourist would and should, learning from his lesson the night before. The tour begins with a bus ride lasting quite some time. Any possibility his adventure the night before of ever succeeding in the dark is defunct, knowing the distance. He gets off the bus with several other tourists at the veritable entrance of Newgrange. Wow, He thinks, what a heritage site this is, ostensibly older than any man-made monument in the world. Yet he'd never heard of it until a fellow at the convent brings it up in one of the many conversations Rote sparks on sacred sites and such. Now to be entwined in with a genuine piece of human history, dwarfing any book proclaiming all history, must seem like blasphemy. The tour guide herself helps the whole experience. A lovely, learned Irish woman who, with her ethereal qualities, leads the group around the earthen mired dome mound with huge stones around the base. The slabs of stone rest on their long sides, side by side, joined together all the way around in a big circle forming the base of the tumulus. The other Stonehenge-sized sarsen stones he sees stand 7 or so feet high, as the ones lying in length do. The main stone at the center of the entrance stands or lies like a centaur, guarding the tunnel to the interior of the prehistoric site. He sees it on its side like all of the stones encircling this earthen mound like dome proper. A spiraling circle of stones gradually encircles the site at large, standing tall as sentinels. And like the stones situated at the 4 cardinal points or directions of the earth, the entrance stone has carvings on it coiling from a point outward likened to a gyrating galaxy, or like one of those humorous hypnotizing spiraling circles, sort of in the same way a spider spins. The circling circle gradually conjoins with 4 others, forming 5 circles, gradually waxing and waning from the complete one in the center, like Olympic Greens. It makes him think of that, if not the Greeks, whose own city-states were tantamount to the Thwath, an Irish equivalent, then who designated the design depicting in the Olympic motif. He's always thought, up until that point, Olympic rings represent the 5 continents, but now he wonders about the real origin and meaning. The guide suggests nobody knows for sure the significance of the ones seen on the stone, though it's speculated they represent the days around and on the winter solstice. The mainstay stone stopping any and all at the entrance has a complete and well-defined spiraling circle in its center, conjoined by the 4 others. 2 on each side of the center one, though gradually less pronounced and prominent on the stone surface. From what Rote learns, the strength of the solstice on the few days before and a few days after, and its ability to shine completely through the sacred solstice shrine are shown. It represents the gradual wane by making the morning of the winter solstice, December 21st, focal and focus point. On that day, the sun aligns and shines through the tunnel and lights up the integrity of the interior. It seems the draw around the date found fate, for the guide alludes to the darkest day needing the most light, and so the coming of Christianity and the birth of Christ on or around the darkest day is now a mainstay. Rote and his group are led through the entrance into the interior along a very confined stretch of tunnel in through to the tumulus. It seems to be on a decline where in fact it's on an incline, a very long one. The long tunnel tumuli lights up gradually with the rising sun on winter solstice, shining through inch by inch, all the way into the center where the floor holds enough light to see someone's face. The tour guide and group feel their way in. Once inside the center of the dome-like domain, they delight in the sight. They're completely covered by staggered and stacked stones, like a timeless stone cathedral dome, standing for thousands of years no less profoundly and soundly. Within the opening are 3 chambers. Rote feels like he's within a 3-dimensional 3-leaf clover, a familiar Irish motif, as are the spirals, seen within and without the ancient grave mound and beyond the world at large. Then it dawns on him, like someone striking his noggin with a wooden shillelagh. He thinks, shamrock. The shamrock, or shimor, he learns sprouts the story of when St. Patrick comes to Ireland to preach to the pagan kings, then accustomed to Celtic customs, and in lieu of a prop, Patrick reaches down and plucks a 3-leaf clover like shamrock, then spends some time explaining to the Celts the symbolism of the Trinity, all stemming from one source, so to the shamrock. That shamrock, he's still inside and intrigued, as each one of the alcoves has some stone-carved sepulchre, signifying some ancient rite. One bay has a stone crematorium cinerary urn. The structure of the burial barrow is like an igloo, except instead of snow blocks, stone slabs, seemingly so precariously perched edge on edge upwards into a dome. Yet as he can see, they're perfectly placed to form an underground domed home, etched in stone. On the solstice, one sure day of sun passes through the tiny portal above the lintel door, though it can't be seen from the interior where they stand ready to enter. As they climb in through the tunnel, the path climbs up, making the floor, once inside the chamber proper, equal in height to the portal above the lintel-like entrance. Just magnificent, architecturally astounding. Nothing on this earth has stood so long and intact. Not one dewdrop, let alone raindrop, ever passes through the portal, let alone from above or below or anywhere. Prehistoric? Nah, thinks Rote, judging by the time-lapse tenure of today's structures, notwithstanding the test of time. Then to enhance the whole experience, the ethereal tour guide simulates what it's like on the morning of the winter solstice inside. As the simulation starts, all eyes are on the tunnel floor. The light, like blood, stains the floor, soaking in its rays closer and closer to where the group stands in the center of all the wonder. Wow, thinks Rote, as the simulation enacts the winter fun, the solstice sun scenario. After the small group look at every nook and cranny. After that, the small group look at every nook and cranny. Rote notices writing on the wall. Someone has carved the name Maguire into one of the interior chamber stone walls. Excellently etched in, his biological mother's maiden name is carved in contoured lines like a monotype cursiva font or style that will make any calligraphist conceited. It's annotated in the 1800s, the name Maguire, scripted into the stone. Probably the first form of graffiti the ancient barrow ever experiences, unearthed around the time tagged after being buried beneath for aeons. The other engraved initials pale in comparison. After the enchanting tour, Rote follows the crowd, though not before being the last to leave. He reaches into one of the sacred alcoves. He does so by bending over to tie his shoes. With his back bent towards the now turned around tour guide, he picks up and pockets a tiny shiny stone sitting there all alone. So with that tour tasted, they're off to another one of the mausoleum-like mounds, Nouth or Doth. And though it's not as enchanting, it does fill in many of the prehistorical facts the first one thankfully omits in lieu of affecting the full effect. By now, the toured-out Tuck is tired and drained after a fine day of sightseeing. He makes his way back to the secret spot only to return lugging his two blue bulging bags that weigh on him like death, with a resounding sound of familiarity, for it feels familiar. Now back in the parking lot, he hopes a cab driver bypassed on his way to retrieve his blue burdens will give him a lift, a mile or so down the road to the bus stop, from where he can catch a coach back to Dublin. It takes some cajoling to convince the cabbie. He claims he's waiting for a group on the way out, or, as he puts it, the cab is chartered. Rote, not wanting to walk the mile with the burdensome bags, finally convinces the cab driver that no one will be more wiser. God, with a scoot there and back. He gets in while the hack heads towards the bus stop. The taxi driver along the drive hears Rote on his way to Dublin. He suggests the kitchen might be a place you might like. The rock band U2 owns and operates it. It's a bar in Dublin. Maybe check it out. The free ride and direction deemed, Rote thanks him with a goodbye. After exiting the cab, he walks across the street to where the hopefully soon-to-be arriving bus will be. It's still undetermined if one will even come. Alas, it comes and goes he does, dropping through Drogheda and then down into Dublin.